Brendan Dassey trial transcripts, day 3, continuing on page 152. Attorney Edelstein questioning Nick Stalky. Your Honor, if the court please. Outside of that, Attorney Edelstein, I hate to interrupt the witness, Your Honor, but I would ask that the witness is directed to answer the question. I didn't ask about sweat. The court, it's about swiped. Attorney Edelstein, oh, I'm sorry. The court, he's talking about swipe. Attorney Edelstein, go ahead. The court, I think that's part of the answer, so why don't you finish your answer, please? The witness, thank you. Those are the only stains that I saw between on that carpeted area in that cargo area. I would expect that if we had an individual that had multiple wounds, especially to the torso area, that you would see additional staining. Now, the lack of stains may indicate that you have some surface or some object that was underneath between the blood source and that carpeted area, which then was removed with the body, let's say, and would prevent any blood then from transferring onto that carpeted area. Well, Mr. Stalky, in connection with your duties as the training coordinator for the response teams, just let me ask you this. Given what you know about this, when the RAV4 got to the lab, there's no reason for you to even remotely suggest that there was anything other than what appeared as at the carpet level in between prior to it coming to the lab, is there? No, we just examine and make note of those observations. This was just your speculation or your probing that I came up with that hypothesis. Okay, but there was nothing to suggest that that hypothesis has any basis, in fact, in this particular incident as far as that vehicle goes. I have no reason to believe that, no. All right, as far as the timing of when the stains that you discover appeared, you conducted no examination to determine the relationship, for example, between the stain present by the ignition switch in relation to the stain you observed on the back door and side panel? No, I cannot determine a timeline from comparing two stains in this particular case. Or in any case? In some cases, you can get a feeling for the age of a stain. Okay, but certainly not any degree of expertise that you'd be able to render an opinion on that. At least not within a short time frame, no. Have you had occasion to be involved in the examination of scenes where an individual has had their throat cut? Yes, I have. Can you describe for the benefit of this jury what sort of pattern is likely to result when that occurs? Well, there's obviously a lot of blood, and depending on the variables involved, you can have a large amount spread over a large area, or you can have it confined to a small space. But in either case, you'll have a large amount of blood directly below the area where that throat was cut. So if an individual, for example, had their throat cut while they were on a bed, you would expect to find a great deal of blood in that area, would you not? Well, yes, especially if the person is still alive at that point. All right. If they're already dead, of course, then there's not going to be as much blood flow because there's no heart or blood pressure. There would be draining blood. However, you'd still see some blood from a cut throat. In this particular case, did you ever go to what you understood to be the Avery property? No, I did not. So you never were asked to go inside of a garage to do any examination for blood pattern evidence? I was not involved in any of scene work there, no. If an individual is struck from a projectile from a firearm, there are distinctive patterns that emerge. Is that correct? If you have the classic gunshot wound, high velocity spatter from a gunshot wound, there are some stains that are indicative of that type of wounding, yes. Is it a fair statement that the patterning that emerges as a result of a gunshot wound as compared to a stabbing type wound would tend to and typically cover or be able to, it would spread out a little further is what I'm trying to say. A gunshot wound? Right. Not necessarily. All right. Are there any differences between the patterns that emerge from a gunshot wound to a head as opposed to, for example, an arm? Yes, there are some indications that you can gather from that would be different. But it is fair to say that there are patterns which you understand through your training and experience that when you look at, you can conclude this was as a result of a gunshot wound? Yes, if those patterns are present, those patterns will give you some indication of may give you some indication of the type of weapon that was used to create them. When you say type of weapon, are you able to distinguish, for example, between a small caliber rifle, say a .22 caliber, and say a .30 caliber? Typically, the larger the caliber, the greater the amount of stains that are going to be present or created. You talked about the gravity effect on blood on the back door inside panel. Blood does not flow necessarily at a uniform rate, does it? I believe that it would flow at a uniform rate on the same or similar surface. On the same what? Same or similar surface. So if you throw blood onto a glass surface, it will flow at the same rate. Irregardless of the source of the blood? Irregardless of the source? No. It would still be the same substance that is striking the surface. You're talking about a large enough amount to cause the flow? Well, you described on the back panel the flow pattern, what you called elliptical, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, of some blood that hit that back panel and that basically dripped down a little bit. My question is there a uniform flow rate for human blood? I don't know that there is actually a uniform flow rate, but through my experimentation and testing, blood is blood. If you throw it on a similar surface, it's going to flow at the same rate. When you examine well, strike that. Other than the photographs that we've all had a chance to look at here today, and I'm talking about the area in the back of the RAV4 where you believe there was hair, other than the photographs, did you bring with you any portion of that plastic molding, that molded area, so the jury could see it today? No, I did not. And I take it you did not see any evidence whatsoever. Well, let me ask you, when you examine those types of patterns and you know that it's been caused by hair, are you able to tell anything about that other than the fact that you believe it was hair? Well, sometimes you can get a feeling for if there was some direction other than the contact that I saw that was indicative of a transfer of blood from bloody head hair. No, there was no other indication in that stain that I could gather. So any additional information on. So you would have no opinion as to whether or not I want to use the same term you did. Did you call it swiping or wiping? Swipe. Well, there's swipes and wipes, ones with blood and ones without blood. Okay, the portion that you talked about with the blood evident, though, that was the swipe with the hair. Excuse me, say that again. I'm just talking about the hair, okay? The hair transfer stain? Right. Okay. Okay, do you use the term swipe for that? No, I did not. What term did you use? That was a contact transfer. All right, as to that particular contact transfer, were you able to make, or did you make any additional findings regarding, for example, the length of the hair? No, I did not. Did you discern from your visual observations any differences in the pattern that would suggest that it was anything other than uniform length? No, I never saw anything that would indicate. Would you be able to determine that based upon your experience, training, and education? Unlikely, because typically bloody head hair, it will leave a textbook stain. However, it won't necessarily tell me the entire length of the hair that was on that person's head. It could maybe give me an indicator of the total length, but then that's a stretch too, because we don't know if it's just a portion of that hair that contacted the surface, and if it could be long strands and we only get a small portion that contacted the surface. So we'd be guessing if we wanted to come up with an entire length of that hair. Do you understand what I mean by does the term blowback have any significance to you in your experience with a blood spatter examination? Yes, it does. Okay, is it fair to say that you performed no tests, no examinations in the lab to determine whether or not there was any blowback evident in this particular case? I did not. You weren't asked to? No. Okay, and just so everybody's aware, can you explain very briefly what blowback really means? Blowback is generally related to a firearm or a gunshot wound, and when a projectile leaves the end of the barrel and strikes a surface causing some blood spatter, there is some energy that returns back toward the gun, and that would be considered blowback. Now you can also view it as general terminology too. Anything that comes back from a particular wound is maybe considered as a general term as blowback. Right, but it's not uncommon though in a case, an investigation involving a homicide, and there's a firearm involved, to request that type of examination on a suspected weapon. Is that a fair statement? I think that's been requested before, yes. Fairly regularly where there's a gun involved, in your experience. It's not your fairly regular question or request, but it definitely is requested. And I take it you've done those types of examinations previously in your career? I have examined guns or firearms for the presence of it, yes. But in this case, nobody asked you to do that? I did not see the weapon, no. Okay, all right, thank you. Attorney Edelstein, pass the witness. Attorney Gahn, just a couple of questions, Your Honor. Redirect examination by Attorney Gahn. Mr. Stalky, the blood patterns or the blood stains that you observed in the threshold area of the cargo, of the rear cargo area of Teresa Halbach's car or on the bumper, you would not be able to tell whether those bloodstains came from the head area of Teresa or any other part of her torso? That's correct. And when you talked about blood from a cut to the neck or a throat being cut, the amount of blood would determine how large the cut is, how deep it is, correct? Well, it can be the size of the wound, and it could also be a matter of time. I mean, if an artery or aorta or something is hit, you will, but if there is, I mean, you can cut your throat shaving and you're not going to have a lot of blood. No. You can have a superficial cut to the neck and there's not going to be a lot of blood. Correct. And the same thing from your analysis or crime scenes. A single stab wound to the torso, say the stomach area, or even the chest area, may be all internal bleeding as opposed to any external bleeding. Is that fair to say? Well, that's true, and there's other variables as well. It could be you could have clothing on or something on that order, and it can be trap the blood that's had been leaking out of that or projected out of that particular wound as well. And finally, with regard to bloodstain patterns and how they're left, bloodstain patterns also can be cleaned up, can't they, afterwards? And there wouldn't be any patterns available? That's true. Correct? And someone could use bleach to clean up blood stains? Yes. And that could destroy any future finding of the biological substance or DNA or whatever it may be. Is that fair to say? That's fair to say. Thank you. That's all I have. The court. Any recross? Attorney Edelstein. Just one. Recross examination by Attorney Edelstein. There's absolutely nothing that you saw on the back of the RAV4 suggested use of bleach, correct or incorrect? I do not have any information of that. No, I didn't see anything that would indicate that. No. Attorney Edelstein, that's all. The court. All right, you may step down. Attorney Fallon, state would call Susan Brandt. Hold on, excuse me. Attorney Gahn, Your Honor, I would offer the exhibits, just 1 second, 165, 166, and 167 into evidence. The court. Any objection? Attorney Freeman, no. The court. Received. The clerk, please raise your right hand. Susan Brandt, called as a witness herein, having been first duly sworn, was examined and testified as follows. The clerk, please be seated. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record. The witness, Susan Brandt, B-R-A-N-D-T. Direct examination by Attorney Fallon. What do you do for a living at this time? I'm a stay-at-home mom. All right. And how many children do you have? 3. All right. What is your educational training? I have a bachelor's in psychology and a master's in counselor education. All right. And when did you receive your bachelor's degree? I graduated December of 2002. And from which institution? The University of Wisconsin-Platteville. And your master's degree, when did you receive that? I graduated May of 2006. All right. And from which institutions? The University of Wisconsin-Platteville also. Directing your attention to a time period of January 2006 until May of 2006. While you were a student, did you have any internship or employment associated with your pursuit of your master's degree? Yes. And where were you employed? I was an intern at Mishicot Middle School and Mishicot High School. All right. Tell us about your internship arrangement at the middle school. I had worked with Karen Baumgartner in the middle school guidance office in the morning, and in the afternoon I worked with Amber Fox Brewer in the afternoon. And that was at the high school? At the high school. All right. And you were you at the schools on a daily basis in your internship capacity? Yes, I worked Monday through Thursday, and I had Fridays off. Directing your attention to January of 2006, early January, did you have occasion to have contact with a student by the name of Kayla Avery? Yes. Would you describe for us, first and foremost, how that contact occurred? Kayla came into the counseling office and asked to speak to a counselor. All right, and who was present when she came in and asked to speak with a counselor? It was myself and Karen Baumgartner. Tell us what happened. Kayla came in to the office, and she was asked by Miss Baumgartner if she minded that I was there, and Kayla said no, and she said she was there because she was feeling scared. All right, let me stop you there first and ask who else, if anyone, was present for this conversation. No one else. All right, so there's just the 3 of you? Correct. All right, and did Kayla reveal to the 2 of you why she was feeling scared and why she wanted to talk? Yes, and what did she tell you? She told us that she was scared because her uncle, Stephen Avery, had asked one of her cousins to help move a body. All right, what else, if anything, did she tell you about that? She also said she was scared about going to the shop, and she specifically asked if blood can come up through concrete. All right, now did she identify which of her cousins may have been asked by her uncle, Stephen Avery, to move this body? No. All right, describe for us, if you will, Kayla's demeanor, her affect during these revelations. She was scared. All right. Did she seem at all confused? No.